All right, good morning, everybody. I'm Ginny Davis, principal of Piedmont Hills. This is our last Zoom with the principal for 2022. Obviously, we're not going to be having these over our winter break, which will be the next 2 weeks. We will return on, double check the date, January 11th will be our next Zoom with the principal when we return for second semester. So our topic today is social media. I chose to do this topic today for a reason, which I will get to later. I am by no means a social media expert. I am a parent of teenagers, though, and obviously I am an educator, so I see the effects of social media at school. So I do think I have some sort of expertise a little bit on talking about this topic. What I did is I did some research and I found an article that I really enjoyed that I actually, when I send out the video of this, I'll link the article so that you guys can read it, but I'm going to go through pretty much everything this article says. And talk about, why we should be concerned about social media and why social media isn't all bad. And then we're going to end with giving parents some advice on how to help our kids navigate social media. As always, if you guys have questions, you can raise your hand. You can put a question in the chat. If you just have a comment, all good. That would be great, because otherwise it's just going to be me talking a lot today. So please feel free to join in. So social media, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with it. Its usage is an all-time high. I think that it was already rising, but the pandemic and having that over a year of being at home with kids with their devices, that definitely, and like social media being, so they couldn't see their friends in person, so they talked to them on social media, that definitely contributed and created. Now social media is part of our life. It's not going away. And so what are we going to do about it? And we have to be knowledgeable about the pros and cons of social media. And there certainly are many negative impacts of social media, but there are some positive effects as well. So I will get to those, but I don't want you to leave today being like, oh, it's all bad and social media is terrible, because there are some bad things and things that we need to be concerned about, but there are some positive benefits as well. One thing that reason that we should be concerned about social media, especially with teenagers, as opposed to ourselves as adults and our own social media, because I'm sure I'm not alone in that. Yes, I use social media. I'm sure all of you do as well. But teenagers, why we need to be more concerned about teenagers is their brains are still developing. And actually, when I was doing this research, it made me think that in the second semester, I probably want to spend one of these meetings talking about teenager brain development. I think that that would be an interesting topic for you guys. So I stay tuned for that. But their brains are still developing right now. And so when their brains are developing, it makes them especially vulnerable to the detrimental aspects of social media, which is why as parents, we want to pay attention to our teenagers' social media usage. So I'm going to go over 4 areas where social media can have negative effects on teenagers. Kuldeep, I really like your screen picture of Levi Stadium.
Perfect.
I love that.
Thank you.
Okay. So let's talk about these negative effects. The first one is mental health. So they've done, researchers have done studies, and they've determined that if a teenager spends more than 3 hours, I'm assuming it's a day, but maybe they didn't actually put a time frame on that. But the more time they're spending on social media, the higher risk of mental health disorders, especially depression and anxiety. What was interesting about this study, and what I found interesting about it, is the age range for girls and boys where we have to be most concerned is different. So for girls, the more time they're spent on social media between the ages of 11 to 13, which is the middle school years, what happens is the following year, so like the next year, so 11 to 13, so when they're 14, if they spent a lot of time on social media between ages of 11, 13, when they're 14, we see higher rates of like depression and anxiety. For boys, it happens a little bit later. So boys, we have to be concerned about their social media when they are ages 14 to 15. I would say like that freshman and sophomore years, and then they can start seeing, higher risks of mental health disorders, like around the junior year. So I thought that was interesting, and I really wish that Ms. Gunter was today. She's not here this week, unfortunately, but I'm going to talk to her about this. This correlates with what we're seeing at school when kids are having severe mental health episodes. So what happens is, with their exposure during those years, that's when they're really sensitive to, the negativity in social media. And what can happen is they then report a decrease in life satisfaction. Also, they've done studies. So then it kind of like levels out, like the senior year of high school, they're kind of okay, which I think we would all agree, like there's other stresses in high school, like social media, like as they get older in high school, they learn to not pay attention to that as much. They get a little bit more mature, but then there's another rise, and both genders see an increase in sensitivity to social media at age 19, which is that freshman year of college. So if you have a kid that's about to graduate high school, they're a senior, and you're saying like, oh, okay, pay attention, and like, it's really important to teach them these skills, because when they go off to college, they're on their own and they got to kind of do this on their own. So this, again, this is an important topic for all ages when we're talking about teenagers. What's interesting about the mental health is research is mixed over whether social media is like directly related, or if it's maybe a result. So like, is it a cause or is it as a result? Like do they spend a lot of time on social media and then as a result, they're depressed or anxious, or are they depressed and anxious and then it causes them to spend more time on social media? The research is kind of mixed on that. A lot of people are out there doing studies right now to try to learn more about this, but I thought that was interesting that they're not really sure. So the second area I want to talk about that can have a negative impact on teens with social media is their body image. So there's a pretty strong correlation between social media and having a negative body image. And it's really easy for teens to compare themselves to pictures that they see on social media of either their peers or celebrities or influencers. And they may realize that these pictures are heavily edited, but they're still comparing themselves to these pictures. This doesn't necessarily end in the teenage years. This can affect adults as well, where we are seeing something on social media and we compare ourselves, as adults to what we're seeing, especially like, I don't know, those of you that are parents, if you've had kids where you've had to do the trend, over the recent years, if you celebrate Christmas, the elf on the shelf, and you see all the stuff on social media, like these parents that like do these like elaborate scenes with this stupid little elf, and it's just like so much pressure, and you're like, oh my gosh. I mean, I literally, my daughter was older, but my son was at that age where like the elf on the shelf was the big deal. And I remember one morning like forgetting to move it, and like before he came down the stairs, like literally flinging it across the room to move that stupid elf. But the point is we compare ourselves to what we see on social media, and that's not good. So the third area is kind of correlated, related to the body image, but peer pressure. Peer pressure amongst teenagers is not a new phenomenon, but it's gotten worse with social media, because whereas when we, all of our age, when we were in school, yes, we experienced peer pressure, but our peers were the people that were directly around us, our friend group, the people that we saw on a day-to-day basis. What social media does is it expands our teenagers' world to way more than the people they're exposed to in real life. And so they've done studies and of teens and social media, and teens are more likely to where you like a photo on Instagram, more likely to like photos with a large number of likes already. So if the picture doesn't have a large number of likes, they're not likely to like it themselves. But if it has a large number of likes, they're likely to hit the like button, even though they may not like the picture. And so they've done studies with their brain activity in looking at photos with a large number of likes. And there's a greater increase of brain activity when a picture has a large number of likes. So I thought this was just kind of interesting when you talk about social media, and like this is a new way of like getting social cues about what's popular and what's accepted, is this whole idea of like pictures with likes. And it doesn't matter like if it could be like bad behavior, it could be pictures of drinking or people doing drugs, and maybe something that like the teen themselves like doesn't really want to do. But again, this is peer pressure, because that picture has a large number of likes. It tells their brains like, oh, that's something that's accepted and something that I should be doing also. And so this was actually something I had not really thought about before with social media. And I think this is one area that it really affects teens, whereas it may not affect adults as much. I think we are less likely to be influenced by peer pressure. I know myself, when I turned 40, I think that's one of the things I love about being in my 40s is I just don't care anymore. I'm going to dress the way I like. I'm going to do what I like to do. And I don't care what other people think. But teens, they haven't learned that yet. They haven't had that life experience to learn that yet. And so this peer pressure on social media, that's something that really to me, that's very concerning. And, something to think about, and how are our teens learning about what's acceptable behavior in society and, out in the world. They're learning a lot of that through social media. The fourth and final area that, is concerning with social media, of course, is cyberbullying. So one thing that social media done, and this, again, I go back to how I started this and talking about the pandemic, and that, they couldn't see their friends and their peers in person for over a year. They were all doing it online, and primarily through social media. That's what this is done, is it's helped to deprioritize communication in person. And so on the internet, and you guys may have experienced this yourself, hopefully not geared towards you, but you can see, like, if you go on Twitter or something like that, the comments that people make, and people will say really, really terrible things on social media. And just people are much more apt to say something mean or negative on social media, stuff that they would never say to a person in real life. They're much more likely to say it because you're hidden behind that screen, and there's kind of that protection of you're not in person. In 2018, there was a Pew Research study that said 59% of teens in the US have experienced cyberbullying. And that's from 2018. And I imagine that this, that was 4 years ago, pre-pandemic, that it's actually probably higher now. And this, of course, just your logical brain would tell you this may be tied to the increased anxiety, depression, substance abuse, suicidal ideation, all of which is on the rise amongst our teenagers. So this is something to be really, really concerned about. And one thing that I want to caution parents when we think about cyberbullying. I think we often tend to worry about our child being a victim of cyberbullying, but I want to encourage you to be equally worried about your child being the bully on the internet, because again, there's that, kind of that comfort of, I'm just doing this on the internet. They would never in a million years say this to a person's face, but what they, they have that protection and they think that, oh, the other person's never going to see this, but they always do. And so just, it's really important for parents to, and I'm going to get, things that you need to talk about with your kids, but it's really important to, teach them this message that don't put anything on social media and don't make comments to anybody on social media that you wouldn't say to their face. If you wouldn't feel comfortable saying that to their face, then you probably shouldn't put it in social media. So I just did 4 areas that made social media sound terrible. So what could possibly be the positives? And there are some positives of social media. It can give students, and actually all people, not just teenagers, it can give them a sense of social connectivity and belonging, where you can join different groups of different interests, and where in your peer group or in your family, maybe you don't have people that share these same interests, but you can find those people on the internet, and that can give you that sense of belonging. It can help develop emotional expression. It also can help with identity development, which is very true for teens. Like if you think about a teenager that's got some sort of long-term illness where they can't be out in the world as much, social media can be that social connection. Teenagers that are navigating the LGBTQ plus identity and trying to figure out who they are, this social media can actually be a very comforting place where they can find connections to people with other teenagers that are like them. It also can be really great for students that are really socially awkward and very, very shy, that social media can be a place where they can express themselves in ways that they don't feel comfortable doing in person. And so it can be a real benefit. One thing that, for parents, that can be a benefit, and this was not in the article, but I just experienced this in my own life 20 minutes before we started. My daughter sent me a text where she wants to do this TikTok trend challenge with me, that you turn your mom into you or something like that. Basically, she was going to dress me up like her. And she's like, oh, mom, this will be so much fun. And so those are the things, I think that one thing that, when you talk about your relationship with your teenager, social media can actually be a benefit to that. You can do a funny TikTok trend. You can share funny cat videos. There's lots of things out there that you can where you feel like you're not connecting with your kid, and then you see a funny video and you're like, hey, I always do that with my son, hey, Nathan, come over and watch this with me, and then we both laugh together about it, and you have that moment of connectivity with your teenager when sometimes they don't want to have anything to do with you. I'd highly recommend using social media for that. So definitely there are some positives, and I think it's important to remember the positives, because there can be a lot of bad with social media, but the reality of social media is it's here to stay. It's not going away. It is the primary way that teenagers learn about the world. It's it's how they communicate with each other. It's how they share information. It's an essential part of their lives. And so we have to be concerned about the negative aspects of it and what it can do. And we have to watch out for those. But I think it's important to remember that it's not all bad. So that said, what some advice for parents? like I said, you can't fight it, but you want to teach them how to use it. And I saw an analogy when I was doing this research. I actually saw it in several places, that just like you wouldn't stick your kid in a car to say, okay, go drive. You actually teach them how to drive. So you need to teach them how to navigate social media. And so, keep it in mind, like, think about that this is something that they need to learn, and that we as parents, we may be needing to learn it ourselves, but we need to teach our kids how to deal with this. So some recommendations, and some of these recommendations I need to take myself. So the first one is to restrict their access, to set curfews or time limits on teens' social media usage. And what I really liked about this when I read this was they used the word curfew. And I don't know about you guys when you were in high school. I had a curfew when my parents said I had to be home at a certain time. With my own daughter, who's now in college, my son's still in 8th grade. He hasn't started like really getting into this yet. My daughter never really had a curfew because she didn't go out that much. Like she actually like didn't, certainly not the way I did. But when I think about what I was doing in high school, I was hanging out with my friends, and my parents said, no, like there was a time you have to be home, and like you have to be home, you can't hang out with your friends anymore. Well, with social media, they're hanging out with their friends on their phone or on their computer, and they could be doing that to 2, 3 in the morning, or 4 or 5 in the morning. And you wouldn't let them be out with their friends at 3 in the morning, like in real life. So why are we letting them do this like on social media? And so having that kind of that concept of a curfew, that like, no, this is when we're shutting this off. I think that is like a really good way to think about like time limits on their social media usage. So, but to do that, you need to monitor their social media usage. And so that's the second piece of advice that what parents can do. Definitely monitor their social media usage. Follow their accounts. Like if they're on Instagram, you like follow them on Instagram. If they're on TikTok, make yourself a TikTok account and follow them. So which means you guys have to be on social media too, whether you use it or not. Create your own accounts so that you can follow your teenagers and kind of see what they're being exposed to. Ask for access if you need to like have access to their accounts. There's a lot of I think depending on where you get your cell phone carrier from, like Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile, like there's like apps and like ways that you can check and see what apps they're going on to. So you can see, like, it'll tell you like they are spending this much time listening to music, they're spending this much time on Instagram, and that sort of thing. So that, I think is, because you guys are, I'm assuming, paying the cell phone bill, you can monitor that. Communicate openly. Talk to your teenagers about your expectations about social media. Again, this is where you talk to them about the impact of cyberbullying, and not just like what they need to watch out for in terms, like I said before, and being a victim, but make sure that they're not the perpetrator, and make sure that you're teaching them and telling them to not say anything on social media that they wouldn't say to the person right to their face. If they're not going to say that to that person right to their face, what they just said, then they absolutely should not be saying that on social media. And then finally, the final tip is to encourage breaks, encourage time off from social media, even if it's a short period of time. Like, honestly, like, it said in this article, like, a week can have like a big difference. And a week would be great, but actually a week to me, I thought it was really, like, this article talks about even short bursts of time, and then it talks about a week. And I'm like, that's a really long time to ask a teenager to be off social media. Like with my own family, like we would have to go camping, and like there would be like no access. Like that's the only way we'd have to like be able to get that done. But I would say, like, even if it's for an afternoon, like you're going to go like do an activity together, like, and this is actually why I chose to have this topic right before our 2-week break, because this break, you spend a lot of time with family. There's a lot of activities that you can do. Like, this might be a great time to have some social media breaks that you like force, and make it be a family social media break that you yourself, you're like, I am putting my phone down. I'm not going to have it out. You don't have it out too. We're going to spend some time together. I know. Jay, I'm with you. 1 week, this article, and it said 1 week. I'm like, that is insane. I don't even want to take 7 minutes off. I absolutely agree. I would like start small, like be like, hey, 30 minutes, like, let's do this together. And we're not going to do it. Or like, even if they don't want to spend time with you, just encourage them to do something for 30 minutes where they don't have social media. And then one thing that's really like, I really, kind of final, like, talk to your teens about this, but then model best practices on your own social media usage. I know about you guys, but like, my phone tells me like how much time I've been like looking at my screen at the end of the week. And there are times where my social media usage is really high, where I will spend way too much time scrolling through Twitter. Probably Twitter not as much, because Twitter has like not been great lately, but like, I like will absolutely scroll through and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just lost an hour of my day. So model that behavior and be like, hey, I am going to be off my phone for 30 minutes. You be off your phone too. Make it a contest. Say who can be off their phone for the longest, and like, there's a prize at the end. Anything that you can do, because those short breaks actually can be very, very beneficial to our teens in negating all of that negativity that we talked about in the beginning, with the depression and the anxiety. Just even those short breaks can help make a difference. And what happens is our teenagers are pretty savvy and they're pretty smart, and they start noticing like, oh, I took that break and I feel better. And so they may start doing like their own self-enforced breaks. And so, which I think would be great. There's a couple of things I wanted to show you guys. Hold on, I just have to find it. I'm going to share my screen real quick. I came across, I'm going to show you this website. You guys see my screen? This family media agreement. So the smartsocial.com is a website that I came across that has a lot of resources for parents. And so I thought, they have this family media agreement. When I send out this video, I'll link this family media agreement. What I'm going to do is I'm going to link it on, it's a Google Doc. Just if you wanted to use this, make a copy of it. And then you can alter it and do whatever you want with it. It's kind of long and it's got different, things. So you can alter it and make it work for your family. And, especially if you think this is a problem, and so screen time agreement, like basically, you can say like, before you've got to do all of these chores before you go on screen time. You guys can alter this, but it's actually fairly long and in depth. And I thought it was pretty valuable. Where it's basically a little contract that you're going to make with your kids. And then they also had a video game agreement. So especially if you have boys, they may be really into, you might be like, Instagram's not a problem, but I don't even know what's a popular game right now. My son's gotten back into Fortnite, but whatever game they're playing. So that, and then what's also great about this guide, and again, I will link this when I send out the video, is there are some, some links and some different things on here. But this is the website. It's called smartsocial.com. And there's a lot of resources on here. I signed up for a membership. So I think you do have to, I don't know how much, actually my son's school district like bought a membership for all the parents, which I can't say that Eastside's going to do that. So I unfortunately can't promise you that. So I don't even know how much the membership is. But there's a lot of stuff on here if you guys like honestly want to look into this and like let me know, I can put pressure on the district if this is something that you think would be valuable for parents. So let me know. So play, over the break if you have time to play around with this. But it looked pretty cool. So I'm gonna stop sharing. That's all I had. So we have comment, FYI, with Xfinity, parents can control access to devices, just phones, iPads, etc., and be able to monitor all the access and platforms that they have been on. Oh, that's great. Thank you, Kuldeep. So that is great to know. So definitely like look and see like through your cable provider, through your like where your cell phone provider. You as a parent, there's a lot of parental controls out there. And so see what you can control and see like not even just control, but like, because depending on the age of your teenager, they may be like, I am too old for you to be controlling all of this. So it may be that you want to be just monitoring more. And so, but then look and see what you can monitor and what you can see as a parent, because there's a lot you can see, because again, you're paying the bill. So take advantage of that. So I spent 30 minutes talking. Any other questions, comments, experiences that you've had, any tricks that you've had that have worked? Questions that you have, problems that you're having? I've been pretty lucky. My son has not expressed any sort of interest in social media yet. He barely uses his phone. He really only has his phone so that we can communicate with him about like, hey, you need to make sure you get on the bus today, like that sort of thing. So he doesn't even use his phone all that much. I'm sure when he gets into high school next year, that's about to change drastically. But right now we're loving the not being on social media. I felt with my daughter, honestly, like when my daughter was this age, I felt like that was when social media, my daughter is now 19. And so this was like 6 years ago, like when she was in middle school, is really starting to get into this. And it was when social media was really starting to like explode in popularity. I mean, it had existed before that, but it was really like something really big. And I felt like, oh, she should be on social media. Like that's like, like a normal teenage thing. And I wish I'd been more restrictive with my daughter in hindsight. So I think with my son, I'm a little bit more like, yeah, so you stay off of that. That's good. But again, with girls and boys, it can be different. This can be one of those areas that, their, usage can be different. Oh, Vincent says, FYI, I attended the parent, I don't know what SVICAC stands for, but SJPD, Internet Protected last week. Another great resource. Okay, great. Thank you. That's awesome. Yeah, there's actually a lot of good resources out there right now for parents, which is nice because again, like when my daughter, like it was just exploding and I felt like 6 years ago, there wasn't a lot out there for parents about what we should watch out for and what should be concerned for. I think there's a lot more out there now, which is great for us as parents. Okay, well, this was just important topic, but short. So we'll end early today. Thank you guys for joining in. I hope you have a wonderful break. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas if you celebrate Christmas. If you don't celebrate Christmas, just have a wonderful 2 weeks. Happy New Year on all of that. So I will, again, like I said, we will return on January 11th. And our topic on January 11th it's called Finding Your Spark. Miss Gunter will be with me. And we always do this the first meeting back in January because, new year, just kind of like, hey, like fresh, like kind of that new year resolution, like this is what direction I want my life to go into. So it's really good for us as adults and for our teenagers. But happy holidays. Enjoy your time off, like I said, and a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. Good luck on your kids' finals. Hopefully they've studied. Okay, bye.